What if your aura isn't broken, just blurred by beliefs that were never yours? Let that question settle for a moment. Feel it, not just in your mind, but somewhere deeper, where your truth lives. Imagine standing in front of a mirror fogged up by time, habits, whispers you once mistook for your own voice. You wipe it, just a little, and beneath the blur, you see something, still whole, still glowing, your aura. Not a mystical field floating outside of you, but the silent atmosphere you carry into every room, the frequency that enters before you speak, the invisible music that composes your presence. And what if that music has been out of tune, not because you're broken, but because you've been listening to noise that never belonged to your soul? Neville Goddard once said that imagination is not just a mirror, it is the sculptor. Your felt imagination broadcasts frequencies into the unseen. It doesn't reflect what is. It projects what you believe, even beliefs you didn't choose. In this modern world, buzzing with guidance, gurus, algorithms, and 100 tips to align yourself, it's easy to confuse clarity with information overload, to think that divine insight must look like certainty, or control, or having the answer. But clarity isn't something you grab. It's something you uncover, gently, like a buried light beneath old dust. Joe Dispenza reminds us that true clarity is not born in the noise of the analytical mind. It rises when the brain slows down, exits survival, and the heart synchronizes with it, like two instruments finally playing in harmony. That's when the field opens. That's when something ancient within you remembers how to see. And maybe, just maybe, you don't need to become light. You don't need to chase enlightenment or perform your worthiness. You only need to remove what dims what's already there. So today, together, let's clean the lens of your inner eye. Let's not chase clarity. Let's uncover it. Let's not fix the aura. Let's remember it. Place your hand gently over your heart, not to do anything, just to remember that it's there. Now take a breath, not for control, but as a doorway. Inhale, feel the space between thoughts. Exhale, feel the space between who you were and who you're becoming. And now, with soft presence, step with me into the fog that isn't there to scare you, but to show you what you're ready to see. Because what if this fog isn't the problem, but the invitation? What if the distortion isn't confusion, but the sign that your real voice is just beneath it? Let's enter now, into the invisible fog. There's a strange ache that comes when you've read all the books, watched all the videos, followed all the signs, and still feel lost. It's not ignorance. It's not lack of effort. It's something subtler, like walking through a mist that wraps itself around your clarity. A fog that doesn't block your path, but blurs your sense of direction. You wake up knowing you're more than your doubts. You can feel the pull of something sacred, but the signal gets scrambled. One moment you're aligned, the next you're doubting. You meditate, journal, reflect, and yet the clarity you crave feels just out of reach. This is not failure. This is frequency friction. There's a discord between what you desire and what you're tuned to. You want stillness, but you vibrate urgency. You long for peace, but your nervous system hums with quiet panic. It's like trying to hear a whisper in a crowded room. The whisper is your truth. The room is everything you've inherited from a world that taught you to mistrust it. Many of us carry a subtle static, emotional echoes from childhood, relationships, environments that shaped how we interpret silence. You may have grown up in a space where stillness meant danger, where intuition was mistaken for weakness, where trusting yourself was never modeled. These aren't just memories. They're frequencies encoded in your body, and they shape the lens through which you see yourself now. That lens becomes your aura, not a light outside you, but the energetic tone of your presence. If your body is the instrument, your beliefs are the tuning, and many of those beliefs were never yours to begin with. Imagine this. Your inner clarity is like a lighthouse. It was always there, but someone handed you a map full of fog. The more you tried to follow the map, the more distant the light became. Until one day, you stop walking. You close the map. You look inward, and there it is, still glowing, still steady, still yours. Let this moment be that pause, a small one, just long enough to feel the hum of your own frequency beneath the inherited noise. Can you sense it? A softness, a pull, like something within you is whispering, "Ready?" Because in the next breath, we step closer, not just to your clarity, but to the place where your fear pretends to be it. There's a moment, quiet and sharp, when you feel something rising in your chest, a signal, a knowing. But is it intuition, or is it fear dressed in sacred language? Anxiety has a cunning voice. It mimics wisdom. It speaks in urgency, cloaked in caution. It tells you to wait, to prepare, to hold back. It says, "This doesn't feel right," when what it really means is, "This feels unfamiliar." And because we've been taught to mistrust ourselves, we listen, not with discernment, but with doubt. Intuition whispers. Anxiety demands. One flows like a soft current beneath the surface. The other rushes like a storm through your nervous system. And unless we've learned to tell the difference, we confuse one for the other. We hesitate. We loop. We call our fear a sign. But the body knows. Always. When the heart and the gut align, there is a calm clarity, even if the decision feels bold. When the nervous system is hijacked by fear, there's tightness, urgency, restlessness. The mind races, the breath shortens, and the body prepares to defend. Yet nothing is chasing us. This is not your fault. It's the imprint of survival, a legacy of vigilance that once protected you, now preventing your expansion. Neuroscience shows us the dance. The limbic system, tuned to past pain, sends alarm signals to the body. The prefrontal cortex, meant to process and integrate, gets overwhelmed. Logic becomes reactive. Intuition gets drowned out. The soul gets silenced by static. But still, somewhere beneath the static, there is a place within you that remembers how to hear. Try this, not as a rule, but as a remembering. Place your attention, gently, on 3 spaces. Your body. What is it really feeling beneath the surface reaction? Your heart. What is the emotional tone? Does it feel like expansion or contraction? Your mind. What story is playing? Whose voice is it? And is it true? No judgment, just presence. As if you were listening to an old friend speak a truth they barely understand themselves. This is not about controlling emotion. It's about recognizing the disguise. Because once you see fear for what it is, it loses its costume. And once you feel your truth beneath it, something quiet opens. A doorway, a breath. And just beyond that breath, we find the place where the mind cannot go, but the soul remembers. The place where real reprogramming begins. We've been taught that if we think the right thoughts, speak the right affirmations, follow the right steps, our lives will transform. And yet, so many carry a quiet shame, because even after all the effort, the shift doesn't last. The old patterns return. The inner critic whispers louder, and the gap between knowing and becoming remains wide. This isn't because you're not trying hard enough. It's because thought alone cannot dissolve what was etched into your cells through emotion. Your mind might say, "I am enough." But if your body still carries the vibration of abandonment, if your heart still trembles with the memory of not being chosen, then those words float on the surface like petals on a stormy sea. True reprogramming is not mental. It's cellular, emotional, sensory. Bruce Lipton teaches that it's not our genes that dictate our destiny, but the signals they receive, signals shaped by our environment, both outer and inner. And emotion is the amplifier. It's the ink that prints beliefs into the body. This is why change feels so fleeting when we skip over the emotional residue. It's like planting flowers on concrete. The roots can't take hold. The soil hasn't been softened by felt experience. Neville Goddard knew this. He taught not to merely say what you want, but to assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, to become, in sensation and vibration, the person who already lives that reality. Because it's not repetition that reprograms, it's embodiment. And embodiment begins not with force, but with presence. A soft inhale, a whispered truth. Not, "I am healed," but "I am safe enough to begin healing." Not, "I am abundant," but "I am learning to trust the flow of life again." These are not declarations. They are invitations. And each time you feel them, not just say them, you open a new signal in your field, one the universe can actually hear, one your cells can respond to. So pause, for just a moment now. Feel the gap between what you believe and what you've been told to repeat. There lies the space where real transformation waits, not to be forced, but remembered. And in that remembering, we step into the quiet patterns that keep scattering our light, even when we're trying to rise. There's a quiet kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from work, or noise, or even emotion. It comes from overexposure, from being constantly on, constantly fed, constantly pulled into someone else's rhythm. You wake up, and before your breath has found its depth, you're already absorbing, scrolling, comparing, reacting. This is not presence. This is input overload, and it scrambles your field more than you realize. Each ping, each swipe, each hit of novelty activates the dopamine circuit. It gives a tiny spark of reward, then disappears, leaving you emptier than before. This is not just distraction, it's energetic dispersion. It's scattering your attention so thin that your inner signal gets drowned in static. You may feel productive, informed, connected, but what you're often becoming is disoriented, internally, unanchored from your own rhythm. Presence has a sound. It's slower, quieter. It doesn't rush. It doesn't grasp. It hums with intention. And intention cannot survive in an overstimulated nervous system. The more you chase stimulation, the harder it becomes to access coherence, the sacred alignment between thought, feeling, and field. Your system stays in a loop of craving. Your aura flickers with mixed signals. Your clarity gets hijacked by digital noise disguised as relevance. But there is a medicine in the opposite: stillness, simplicity, silence. Imagine a day, not of emptiness, but of deep presence. A day where you gently unplug from the noise and tune into the subtler frequencies, the rustle of trees, the sound of your own breath, the shape of a thought before it becomes a sentence, a pen moving across a page, without agenda, the sacred vibration of nature, uninterrupted, not to escape, but to return, not to reject the world, but to remember your original signal within it, because sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is nothing, to stop consuming, to pause the scroll, to reclaim the space where your own frequency can speak again. Let this moment be one of those pauses. Feel the invitation, not as an instruction, but as a question gently placed in your hands. What happens to your clarity when the input stops? And what ancient wisdom begins to speak when you finally become still enough to hear it? Let's listen now to the weather within. Not every day is clear. Not every thought is golden. Some mornings, you wake with fog behind your eyes, a heaviness in your chest, a softness in your will, and that too is holy. Your aura, your frequency, is not a fixed identity. It is weather, internal weather, shifting, breathing, responding, becoming. Some days it rains within you, not because something is wrong, but because something is being watered. Something old is softening, loosening its grip. Something sacred is returning through the tears, through the quiet. And just as we carry an umbrella when the skies are gray, we can also carry symbols, small anchors of reconnection, for our inner climate. A candle that reminds you of warmth, a sound that brings you back to center, a breath that opens space where tightness once lived. These are not tools of control. They are companions, gentle mirrors. When the energy is cloudy, when the clarity feels distant, these symbols become reminders. Not that the light is gone, but that you are still here, watching the clouds pass. Your nervous system remembers associations faster than your mind does. The smell of something safe, the tone of a certain note, the texture of something familiar. These are not just senses. They are portals. They can shift your field. They can speak to the part of you that words never quite reach. Imagine this. Every object around you has a vibration, but only a few have meaning. The ones you choose, the ones you charge with love, memory, intention. These become beacons, lighthouses in your inner fog. Your aura responds not only to thought, but to reverence. When you hold something with sacred attention, your field changes, not because of the object, but because of your presence with it. So breathe now into the idea that your spiritual state doesn't need to be permanent. It only needs to be witnessed. Weather always changes, and every season of the soul brings its own revelation. Even in your cloudiest moments, you are emitting something real, something beautiful, something human. So pause here, in this tender space, and ask yourself, what symbol will you carry to remind you that even storms can be sacred, And what happens when you no longer fear the clouds, but begin to see through them? There is a silence that doesn't ask for quiet. It asks for presence. In a world that rewards speed, production, forward motion, we forget the sacredness of stopping. Not because we're lost, but because we're shifting. Because clarity often arrives not in the rush toward answers, but in the exhale after we stop searching. We're told that transformation requires momentum, that spiritual growth is a race toward the next level. But what if the real elevation happens when we slow down enough for our soul to catch up? Gregg Braden speaks of ancient traditions where silence was not absence, it was power. A pause was not a delay, it was preparation. The breath between notes in sacred music, the stillness before a wave rises, the sacred space between the question and the knowing. Your body understands this rhythm. It is not built for constant acceleration. It needs integration. It needs the space between. It needs inertia vibrational, the slowing down that allows your cells to reorganize, to remember. When you pause, your energy settles. Your aura stops fluttering. Your nervous system unwinds from its grip on control. And what emerges in that stillness is not emptiness. It is coherence. Try this, not as a solution, but as a moment of reverence. Place one hand over your belly, one over your heart. Breathe in, not to fix anything, just to feel. And as you exhale, offer gratitude, not for certainty, but for the doubt that keeps you searching, for the mystery that keeps you soft, for the space that holds your next becoming. This is not about forcing presence. It's about allowing recalibration. Because when you slow down, your frequency stops chasing and starts calling. You shift from noise to resonance, from seeking to remembering, and from that place of stillness, we reach back into memory, not to relive it, but to rewrite the frequency it still carries. Memory is not fixed. It is a living language, rewritten each time we recall it. And yet, most of us carry our past like stone, not story, as if it were carved and irreversible, as if pain had the final word. But what if your memory isn't the past, just your current version of it? Neville Goddard understood this with piercing clarity. He taught that we can revisit moments not to replay them, but to re-feel them differently, to walk back into the rooms where we lost ourselves and bring in a new presence, a new vibration, a new witness, not to erase what happened, but to change the frequency it holds in our field, because the emotional signature of an experience is what lingers, not the facts. And if we've been living with memories that carry shame, abandonment, fear, those frequencies shape what we believe we are still allowed to receive. Imagine walking into a memory, not as the wounded version of you, but as the self who has touched healing, not to pretend it didn't hurt, but to bring a new feeling to where the wound once was, a touch of compassion, a breath of love, a recognition of your resilience. A woman once remembered the moment she wasn't chosen. For years, she lived with the vibration of that rejection, carried it into her relationships, her mirror, her silence. But one night, in stillness, she returned to that scene, not to analyze, not to judge, but to feel something new. She saw herself as she was, brave, tender, waiting. And from that moment, she no longer carried the story of rejection. She carried the energy of return to herself. This is alchemy, not gold from metal, but truth from pain. And you don't need to rewrite your past. You only need to meet it with new eyes, a different vibration, a gentler witness. So breathe now, and if a memory arises, not a loud one, but a quiet flicker, don't push it away. Let it approach. Let it speak. Whisper to it what your soul has always known. You are no longer alone in this. And in that whisper, something ancient shifts. Something loosens. And the field around you begins to clear, ready for the light that was always trying to reach you. You are not a prisoner of your history. You are the author of your vibration. And every day, every breath, you write a new paragraph with your presence. Bruce Lipton reminds us, biology is not destiny. Your genes are not scripts etched in stone. They respond to signals, to perception, to the music of your internal environment. Your frequency is not a side effect of your life. It is the setting of your life. So when we speak of divine clarity, we're not speaking of certainty or perfection, or knowing what comes next. We are speaking of now, of the lens through which you see this moment. Clarity is not control. It is not brightness without shadow. Clarity is the gentle courage to clean the lens, to choose resonance over noise, to pause before the reaction, to listen before the answer, to feel before the world tells you what to believe. Neville once said, "Your assumption, though false, if persisted in, will harden into fact." So what are you assuming now? About your worth, your future, your light? Because even if it feels like you're pretending, if the heart is in it, if the vibration is real, the field will respond, not to the words, to the energy beneath them. This path isn't loud, it isn't quick, it isn't always seen, but it's sacred. You don't need to change your entire life. You only need to shift the field in which your life happens, a subtle recalibration, a quiet remembering. And from there, everything else begins to unfold. If this touched something true in you, consider sharing this with someone who's been walking through their own fog, not to show them the way, but to remind them they're not walking alone. Leave a whisper in the comments, just a word, a feeling, a veil you're ready to lift. Because when one person remembers their light, it helps us all remember ours. This isn't something to learn, it's something to carry. You didn't just listen, you remembered.